Hello everyone, and welcome to part 5 of my SSH series. In this one we're going to specifically deal with logging. So let's begin with that. First we're going to look at this, which is the etc syslog.conf file. That's the area that we're going to mainly focus on for configuration. Next up, let's take a look at something before we get to that. This is the log viewer, and right here this is, as you can see, cat var log failed ban.log. There's not a lot going on in here, but you can see where it does the log rotation. I've got that set up. I'm not going to get into that since you don't really need to do that, but I do. I prefer to do that, so you can see where it does that at. Going over here, you can see where it's pointing to the auth.log, and that's where authorizations are basically logged at. And here you can see sudo. You can see some IP tables. That's where it's loading into the configuration. There's a plethora of things here. You can see I got the various dates. Here's deny hosts. That's currently loading. That's a rather large file at the moment, so I'll just minimize that. IP tables, I just recreated that, so that's currently blank, but that's the iptables.log. Here's the kern.log. I just did a forced log rotation, so that's why these are empty. Normally these have a bunch of information. LPR is the printer, mail. So yeah, you can see here I'm running postfix. Just kind of a rundown on some configurations. Here's syslog. You can see max. There's just a ton of information. Not really going to get into the specifics of it, just kind of showing you this is the log viewer and the overview of what the logs look like. You can certainly grep the logs and filter it, look for things, track MAC addresses. If you're using Linux, you should have an idea. It's pretty configurable, and you can get whatever information you want out of it pretty much. So that's the log viewer. There's that. We'll get out of there. Now looking at the syslog.conf, you can see the paths to the various things. iptables.log. Here's your kernel, daemon, cron, syslog. I don't really use the news. I have it in there though. Not much to this, but it just shows you what's going where. This is really the crux of what you have to worry about and configure. And then the debugging, you want that. And that's pretty much it for the log. Nothing super fancy. Again, like everything else, there's a million ways to do it. All depends on how you want to configure it. And this is my setup, what works for me. So hopefully it gives you a good overview. The big thing with logs, as I mentioned before though, is monitoring them and checking them and looking for various information. And what you're looking for can certainly vary from ports, processes, which daemons are running, which users have logged in, when they last logged in, etc., etc. You can even look at user accounts and see if any of them have user ID of 0, like root. Tons and tons of things, so you can configure it however you want. But this all ties into SSH because you definitely want to keep track of who's logging in. Just like you want to track sudo, you also want to track who's logging into SSH and when and where from. So that's where this comes into play and ties into the whole SSH deal. See you in the next video.